Good morning. This is Kenton for DreamsCloud. Today we're back in the studio with Andrew Paquette. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning, Kenton.
Andrew and I have been discussing through three previous interviews here his work with dreams. We covered introduction to Andrew's work, validation of dreams, and then dreams with an internal-external focus. So today we're going to start the topic of a mixture of dream, which is both a physical dimension to it and a spiritual dimension. And that's probably enough from me. I'll let Andrew take the topic.
Okay. Well, as we were saying earlier, I managed to figure out that I was having dreams of things that could be validated in a physical sense. That is to say, I dream about a future event, and then I could go check my dream journal and see that indeed it had enough specific details in it that it was convincingly predictive of this other event. Or, for instance, I would dream about things that were happening at a remote location at the house of a friend or something like that, and I discovered that I could validate those things. Now, those are all what I would call purely physically focused dreams, because they're things that can be validated at a physical level. But then you have, I've had other dreams that really can't be validated at all. Like, for instance, I'll give you two examples. They both have to do with ghosts. So I have a dream that my grandmother is leaving her body, and I see her aura, and it's very beautiful. And I know that it means to me that she's died. So then I check, and I find out she's died. So that's something that I can validate on a physical level. But let's look at a different version of something very similar. When my grandfather died, her husband, he started appearing to me in my dreams. Now, I didn't know either one of my grandparents very well in life, because I lived 1,500 miles away and my parents didn't get along. Let's just leave it at that. So he started coming to me in my dreams, and he said, "Now that I've died, I'm waiting for your grandmother. And when she dies, then we're going away and you won't be seeing us anymore." And so he showed up in a number of dreams and would tell me various things about his wait for my grandmother. And he told me that she was very confused, and essentially gave me a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, which later was confirmed a little while later in the family. But apart from that, most of the things he told me really couldn't be confirmed. Like, for instance, he had with him the spirit of my cat, Porgy, who had died. Well, there's no one I can ask about that to see if that's real. Okay, so there's one type of dream about a ghost that can be verified, and another that cannot be, and yet they're connected, because later on, when my grandmother does die, I have a dream right after that where my grandfather are together, and they say goodbye, and they leave, and then I don't see them anymore. So that's the link up, where I take the ones that can't be validated with the one that can, and now all of a sudden they're connected. And that makes me wonder, all right, well, what about the other ones? What about the ones that I couldn't verify before? Should I accept those as real, or shouldn't I? Another example of this, which is probably a little bit more extreme, because instead of just going from physical to non-physical, we're going from physical to a non-physical that actually has religious connotations. So I once had a dream just before Kuwait was invaded by Iraq, before I knew who Saddam Hussein was, where you could say it was either a spirit guide or an angel, came to me and showed me Saddam Hussein, and showed me the damage that was going to occur as a result of this war that would be caused in his name, and the people that would be killed, the environmental damage that would happen. Curiously enough, she told me that the environmental damage was going to be just horrendous, which turned out to be true. But the thing is that this was an angel telling me all this stuff, or a spirit guide. And so I wake up from this dream, I write it down, I write down all the details, I make my little portrait of this guy I've never seen before that looks just like Saddam Hussein, and then 2 weeks later all that stuff happens, or it starts happening, because obviously it covers a span of time. But what am I supposed to make of the way the message was delivered? It comes through a spirit guide or an angel. Is this really an independent spiritual entity, or isn't it? I have verified part of this dream, so you would think that would lend credence to the way the message was delivered. And in my mind, that seems like a fair thing. If I have a telegram that says, you just won the lottery, let's just pretend for the sake of optimism that actually happened. Am I supposed to think that the person who gave me the telegram doesn't exist? It was just a figment of my imagination. It doesn't make any sense to me. The telegram itself is real, and the event it related to is real as well. Now, this can actually get to be fairly tricky fairly quickly, depending on your beliefs. Because if you believe, for instance, that all spirits are evil, which in some religions you would be forced to accept, or that they're all sleeping in Abraham's bosom, or they're doing something else, that they have specific roles they have to play, and it does not involve coming to people in their dreams and telling them things, it's going to be difficult. If, on the other hand, you don't believe in ghosts, you don't believe in spirits, you don't believe in God, it's also going to be difficult because then what's going to happen is you're getting religious or spiritual information that resembles very closely things that you've heard about coming out of churches. And that's going to make you uncomfortable. And that's the position I found myself in because I started out as an atheist. And all of a sudden, I'm having dreams of angels. I'm having dreams of God. I'm having dreams of Jesus. I'm having dreams of all of these spiritual characters, most of whom I don't know. I don't have names for. Some of whom I do. Saints from all sorts of different types of cultures and so on, and they're telling me spiritual messages. Now, the messages themselves, in my mind, made sense. They were simple, they were easy to understand, they were really hard to contest actually because they made so much sense. So, for instance, I have a dream of a spirit guide coming to me, and he said, "Now, I've been noticing in your thoughts, you're wondering why is it that that we have people who commit this certain quantity of evil in their lives, and then you have these people who commit less, and you have people who pretty much don't commit any evil. Why don't you just have the people who don't commit any evil? Why do you have all of these in the same place?" And he gave me this analogy to the refinement of ore into metal, into processed metal, into something that is then part of a finished product. He said, you don't get the finished product unless you start with the ore. And the ore is meaningless without the refining process. And he showed me how if you took any part of that process away, then you lose the end product that you want. And he was likening that to the experience of a lifetime on Earth or a series of spiritual experiences where you learn to go from a less finished state to a more finished state, or a less pure state to a more pure state. And that just made sense to me as an idea, as a concept. And there are a lot of dreams like that. Now, the thing is, though, when they get to looking very religious, it starts really bothering me a great deal. Now, it's not like I've never been to church. In fact, although I didn't go to church at all until I was almost 40 years old, I then did start going to church, primarily because of my dreams. And I went pretty regularly for a couple of years. I really enjoyed it. But I have quite a few conflicts with doctrines of major religions. One of the reasons I was kicked out of my Bible study group, I'm afraid to say. But listen to this dream, and you tell me what you think about this, because I'll tell you, it gave me really quite a lot to think about. So I have a dream that mixes pretty effectively something that can be verified physically with something that absolutely can't be. And contained within the dream is an awareness on the part of the entity that gives me this information that I can verify one half and not the other, and that's why I'm getting both, okay? So I get this angel spirit guide comes to me in the dream, and he says, number one, you're dreaming. Two, there's this great religious event that's going to happen, and I want you to know it's going to happen. I want you to believe it's going to happen. And to give you some trust in that, I'm going to show you this great calamity that will also happen, but it's going to happen first. And this is a physical thing that you, by the way, I'm giving you a lot more details, but this is the idea that was contained in what he was saying to me. So I'm going to show you this calamity that will happen soon, as a sign that this other thing, this more spiritual thing that you really can't verify until it's on top of you, will also happen, okay? And he says, I'm going to show it to you 3 times so that you know this is true. And I expect also he did that so it'd make it easier for me to remember. So what he shows me is this, and this happened in November of, I think it was November 23rd, something like that, of 2004. And he shows me this huge amount of coastline. It was more than you could actually see if you were in an airplane looking at the Earth, because of the curvature of the Earth. Even from an airplane's point of view, it would have blocked parts of the coastline because it was so much. And he showed me this huge wave, just a gigantic wave, tremendous wave, heading towards this tremendous amount of coast. And I saw all these hundreds of thousands of people standing around or lying down, or just in some way they were near the coast or in boats or whatever. And then this wave came, and they all saw it, and they got up, and they were starting to run, or some of them didn't even have time to do that. And the wave just engulfed them all, and they drowned. And I saw hundreds of thousands of people getting killed in this giant wave. And then this angel/spirit guy comes back to me, and he says, now I've shown this to you once. I'm going to show you this two more times, and I'm showing it to you so that you know that this great big religious event that I've told you about, I'm being coy here about that. I really shouldn't do it. It's just because it even makes me uncomfortable talking about it here, but I'll just say it outright. He said, this is a sign that Jesus is coming back to earth. Okay? So this calamity is a sign of that. Now, obviously, if he thinks that's soon, well, it's already been 7 years. So their idea of time is a little different from ours. But in any event, so he shows it to me again. And then when it's done, he's showing a consciousness of how many times he's shown it to me. He says, now I've shown it to you twice, now I'll show you to you a third time so that you know this is real. And then he shows it to me the third time, and then I wake up and I've got this to write down, okay? And then a few weeks after that, I have another dream. This had no angel or spirit guide in it at all. I was just in a Japanese seismography station, and I was observing a printout of just dozens and dozens of very high-powered earthquakes. They were all, I think, at the bottom end in the 7 range at the Richter scale, and at the high end they were very, very low 9s or very high 8s. And none of the people looked perturbed in the seismography station, which made me curious. So I said, why aren't you bothered by this? I would imagine you'd be running around like Godzilla was eating Tokyo right now. And one of the guys, in response to that, he looked over at a globe at the part, like the Indian Ocean area, and he said, it's because it's not happening here, it's happening there. And then I woke up, and it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 24 hours after that dream that the Boxing Day tsunami occurred in the Indian Ocean area and killed several 100,000 people. Now, that's the only event that really matched either one of those dreams, and it was very close in time to it. So I consider that to be a validation, a physical validation of the part of that first dream that was given to me as a way to have confidence in the other half. It's kind of like earnest money. So you're going to buy a house. You say you're going to buy a house. The realtor doesn't trust you, so he says, I need to have a $20,000 down payment. Give me that, and then I'll trust you're really going to buy the house. And that's kind of what that was. So this spirit guide comes to me and says, here's your earnest money. Here's the calamity that's going to happen, and you see that. You can trust me for the other half of this. Okay, so I have this dream, and I'm not coming from a background where I know a great deal about Christian ideas. In fact, my background of reading the Bible, which I did much later in life, explicitly rejects the idea of Jesus as a Messiah, of coming back. I prefer the Judaism and the idea that if there was a Messiah of any kind, he already came and went thousands of years ago. But this dream is telling me something else. It's telling me something that I don't believe, something that I've already, on an intellectual level, rejected. And at the same time, it's combining it with something that I can validate and I know is real. So what am I supposed to make of a dream like that? And it's not the only one. I've had several others like it, all of which are very powerful, and all of which I think raise a very serious question. Now, the thing is, ultimately, the question resolves itself into the following idea. Do you have an interest in improving the quality of your life and the quality of your actions right now, or would you rather wait until it's too late to do anything about it? And that, I think, is actually the crux of every religious type of communication that's ever been made in the history of man, or philosophic, or even rational atheistic, that if you have a idea that you could do something better, more honestly, more moral, then you should just do it. You shouldn't question whether or not it's the right thing to do. You know it's the right thing to do. There's no time like the present to go ahead and do it. And the idea embedded in all these dreams that have this kind of religious subject matter is exactly that, which I think is a very important thing to get across. But it is combined with, in this particular case, something that I would think comes across as rather fanciful. And I'm sorry to say that's what my dream said, and that's all there is to it.
Well, I think no matter how you look at it, the value of the message of how to live life and how to proceed is what we take away from it. And I appreciate that message, and appreciate your work. Let's carry this interview forward, one with our final interview of dreams of a pure spiritual nature. I appreciate your time today. One last question. Inside of your kind of resource website here, there are a lot of illustrations and drawings you've done of these dreams, which to me really helped as I read your book and and you and I have talked. I've kind of used your website as a way to dig into your work and to see your illustrations. I think we're fortunate that Andrew is a great illustrator and graphic artist, because it gives us an insight into these dreams. Any comment on your illustrations and how over the years you've taken your talents as an artist and to help bring these dreams forward?
Well, first off, you can thank Jackie Lewis for the fact that I've gotten some pretty nice illustrations there. She's a researcher at the Saybrook Institute right now, working with Dr. Stanley Krippner. And the reason I want to give a thanks to her is because although I've always illustrated my dreams in the journal, typically this would happen in the middle of the night with the lights out and me trying to be very quiet so I don't wake up my wife. So that, you know, some of the early journal illustrations are fairly messy and, shall we say, of lower quality than they have become. And gradually over the years I started making more careful drawings. But then it was a couple of years ago, Jackie contacted me, and she was making a presentation about a dream I had about or a series of dreams I had about the 9/11 events before they happened, and she was wondering if I had a illustration from my dream journal that corresponded to one of the dreams in that series, which I did not have. And I thought, well, you know what, as long as I make it clear that I'm just illustrating something after the fact, I guess it's fair to go ahead and do it. And that was something that had held me back for quite a long time. I felt like, well, I don't want anyone to get confused between the dreams that were actually made at the time and dreams that are made later. But that was really easily resolved by just putting the date of the dream on the paper and then the date of the illustration as well, and restricting it to dreams that really weren't meant to be used for evidential purposes, and that was the case here. So I made a watercolor of a part of the dream that had actually, strangely enough, did have a symbolic content. And from there I realized, wait a minute, I've got all these other dreams that I'd love to illustrate. So I went ahead and I started doing it, but I restricted myself to the spiritual dreams where there's no physical content to verify. So that none of them are meant for evidential purposes, but they're just meant purely for illustrative purposes, so people can have an understanding of some kind of an idea of what they might have looked like, or to get a feeling for the quality of the dream. And yes, go ahead.
No, I think they're a great companion to your work, and your website, the illustrations. I really recommend that people dig into both simultaneously. I got a tremendous amount by correlating your illustrations with pieces of your book.
Well, now you see, I wanted to illustrate the book that you have, but my publisher didn't want me to because they said it'd make it very difficult. But now you're making me want to insist for the sequel.
I hope so, and I look forward to that. We have one more interview to go, and thank you, Andrew.
No problem. It was my pleasure. Good night.
Good night.